Hi Year 10, this is going to take you through your comparison question feedback that you did on the Sir Keir Starmer article. So just first to stress to you that the mark scheme that I've sent you, I've just made that mark scheme up, but that is exactly what the mark scheme looks like from the exam board. So they'll split it up into those headings of what both texts do for what and how, and then they'll say what text 1 does for what and how, and then text 2 for what and how. So there's usually quite a lot of points to choose from this question, and you only need to find 10 of them. So that's what makes the question very nice. What makes it a bit tricky is that to get those top marks, to get into that, elusive top band of 9 and 10 marks, you do need to be, obviously you need your range, but you do need to also be really thinking carefully about, well, what do both texts say? And what are the key kind of contrasting points that the texts make that are completely opposite, and then what points do just only one of the texts make. So kind of going through that process of synthesizing the points across both texts before you start writing is the key to getting those marks 9 or 10 out of 10. You can, however, get a really solid 8 out of 10 on this question just by having your usual range of inferences, including methods, as long as you're referring to both texts and you are very clearly stating it's both texts. So that's just a little summary. You can pause here and write down anything I've just said if you feel like you want to remember it and put it in your notes for next year. And you can do that in your pink books, preferably next to this work in green pen. And can you write the title comparison question feedback, please? Okay, so just pause the video, get yourself set up. Right, the key things that I just wanted to highlight at first was kind of what I've just said, I suppose. So make sure you are stepping back and checking if both texts suggest the same thing at any point. It's an easy 2 marks. Excuse me one second. So, like I've just said, it does require more advanced reading skills. You are going to have to go through both texts and bring together similar points and inferences. And that's why you get those elusive 9 and 10 marks for it, because it does require a lot more careful reading. So in the text that I gave you, these were the 2 similarities that I could find. So the first suggesting he's wealthy and the second suggesting that he is a caring son. And what I just want to go through with you now is how to link a similar what mark, which suggesting he is a caring son. Both texts do that. However, they do it in a different way and to different effect. So this is, if you do this as a subheading, linking a similar what to a different how. So both texts suggest he is a caring son. So that's your 2 inferences, because both texts do suggest that. Text 1 states he bought the field for his late disabled mother, so that secures the first point because you've got the quotation for text 1. Whilst text 2 says he made the donkeys accessible to his mother who appreciated their closeness, and that's your second tick because you've pinned down point 2 with your quotation from text 2. I actually find it quite difficult to structure that second quotation and embedding it. As long as you're closely referencing the text, you'll usually get a tick, but I just didn't want to model not using a quotation for you. So that's the what. I've pinned down 2 marks for a what there. However, hopefully you will have noticed that text 1 waits right to the bottom of the article to actually say anything positive about him, and even then they don't really draw attention to it. It's very subtle. So that's a very different choice, isn't it, that writer has made compared to the text 2 writer, who's put it really close to the top. And that's something that you can draw out for a mark. It's a choice the writer's made, and therefore it's a how mark. Oh, sorry about my phone. So, however, we've got a clear indication that we're now moving on to differences. Text 1 positions this much more positive information towards the bottom of the text to emphasize the more negative aspects, whereas text 2 leads with it. You do not need to go into all of the things that you would in literature, talking about writer's purpose and why the writer's done that and why they're presenting him negatively, what contextual factors can we bring in. All of that doesn't matter. That will be enough to get you the mark for this on the mark scheme. If you have a look at your mark scheme, the more positive features are placed at the bottom of the article. Okay, so that's an example of how you can go from a similar what to a different how, because even in most texts, writers are not going to pick the same way. of conveying the same point, are they? They're two different people. They're likely to have a different approach. So always look out for those. And you know, think about, well, is there a different way they've chosen to present this information? But please just don't go crazy and start thinking about, you know, the Daily Mail and how it's a right-wing newspaper and all the rest of it. Okay, so next point then is this one. So this person wrote, both texts are quick to mention Starmer's wealth, which is good because we're looking for that in the both text points. We're looking for both suggest he is rich or wealthy. As though it is the most important thing about him, with text A writing how his land, sorry, my bar's over that bit of the quotation, is worth up to 10 million, and text B writing how rescue donkeys cost him 10 million. So this is good because we've got, we've got two quotations, one from each text. The texts are very clearly labelled, although I think it was text 1 and 2, so just make sure you use the same wording as the exam paper. However, I'm not convinced that we've got a secure inference here. Yes, they mention as well, and it is good to highlight that they're quick to mention as well, because they both do that immediately at the beginning, don't they? Yes, it does suggest that that's important. It's important about him. I mean, it is there that he's wealthy, and the word wealth. Oh, it's a difficult one. Some examiners would give that and some wouldn't, and I'm completely on the fence right now, and I've marked this paper. So just make sure you really pin it. Just make sure you don't leave them in any doubt is the key learning point for this. Can you write down the key learning points? And you can also write down, you know, part of what our classmates have said, if you think that'll help you with examples. But what's really, really good about this one, and you absolutely must do, is you must use a quotation from both texts to support a both text inference. And we'll see some examples later where that's not done. Okay. Right, so next one. Both texts state that Starmer acquired the property while he was working as a human rights lawyer, quote, highlighting his prosperous past has left him affluent. Some great vocabulary in here. We've got prosperous and we've got affluent. Really, really, really good, impressive language. So this again is going for this first point, suggests he is rich and wealthy. Now, this is absolutely 2 marks from one sentence and one quote, and bizarrely, they're both, obviously it was because of the nature of this woman replying on Twitter and kind of using the same language to write it from a different perspective, but that is actually correct. Both texts use that literal quotation word for word. So this, I have double checked, and that's absolutely fine. So it's probably never going to happen in any other text ever that you will get 2 exact quotations in the 2 texts. But if it does happen, then this is absolutely fine to do it this way. Both texts do use that quotation, and therefore they both highlight that he has got a very wealthy past and he's very affluent. So really spot on, very concise way of getting the 2 marks there, leaving more time for other points. Okay, there's lots to learn in this one, so stay with me on this one for a little while. I don't know if you want to write that one down as an example, but just remember that it is very rare to have the same quote in both texts. Okay, both texts suggest that Starmer is wealthy and financially well off. Yes, they both suggest he's wealthy. That's perfect for point 1 under both texts. Brilliant. Do we need to say wealthy and financially well off? You can just say one or the other because they both mean the same thing. So just watch out for that. Save yourself some time. This is a very intense paper. Lots of people don't even get this question, and I don't want any of you to be one of those people, because this is a nice question to get a good 7 or 8 on, at least. So, have we secured the quotations from both texts to get them 2 marks for the fact that they both suggest he's wealthy? Unfortunately, no. So stating in text 1 his land is worth up to 10 million, well, that can give you a tick for text 1, but there's no quotation for text 2, and therefore I can't give 2 marks there. All right. In text 1, it suggests that he was dishonest about his wealth to the public, stating that he did not mention about his portfolio. Brilliant. Yes, dishonest, if we look under text 1, what is point number 3, suggests he misled the public about his wealth. Brilliant. Okay, so different quotations to what I've put in the mark scheme, different inference, but it means the same thing, so we give the mark. So, you know, be kind to yourself. Don't be looking specifically for the word misled when you're applying this mark scheme. And then the third point here, in text 1, he's also presented as privileged due to the amount of land he owns. Brilliant. Now, I think I have give that a tick. However, I've just realised there's no quotation, and I don't know whether the quotation is underneath the screenshot. Let's assume there is a quotation, and then the point it stands. Okay. So, although we've lost the point at the start by not adding in the text 2 quotation, we've got some really nice, fluent, clearly labelled which text the inferences are from sentences. That was a terrible sentence I just said. Hopefully you followed it. All right, so key learning points in this one to write down. You do need a quote from both texts. If you say both texts, you've already written that one down. But this is an example of where it would lose you a mark. Avoid saying the same thing twice, so don't say wealthy and financially well off. If you want to go into journalism, that's like a number 1 rule. And then clearly label which text you're discussing, which this one does really well, in text 1, in text 2, in text 1, in text 2. And then brilliantly a mark per sentence here. But just bear in mind that, you know, this is a question where you can get 2 marks per sentence as well. This is nice and fluent, really lovely. Okay. Right, next one. Text A uses the verb conceded his London house to suggest that Starmer has fakes how much wealth he has, whereas the text B never mentions the $1 million pound home. I've just turned into American for some reason, and instead writes about how caring Starmer uses it for his late disabled mother. Okay, so what this person's done really well is I created the what mark in my mark scheme of it suggests that he misleads the public about his wealth. We've just seen that on the previous answer using the inference dishonest. Now what this person has done is they've converted that into a method mark by thinking about the verb. The verb is to concede, to admit something. So well done. Even though it's a what mark on the mark scheme, this person can give themselves a method mark for this question, this sentence, because they've converted it into a method mark by adding in the method. So look out for you in your own answers if you've done that as well, because you might have done. Okay, so we've got the tick next to fakes because that's the same inference as misled. However, for the second one, text B never mentions the $1 million. Oh, I'm obsessed with dollars. Pound home, and instead writes about how caring Starmer uses it for his late disabled mother. I don't feel there's an inference there. You possibly could argue that caring is an inference, but I'm not sure because it's whereas the inference caring doesn't really contrast with the fact that he's faking his wealth. So that doesn't quite fit either. I think you could have got the mark if you'd have if instead of saying whereas you just put a full stop and then said text B never mentions the home and instead writes about Starmer being caring and then quote, then you would have got the mark. Yeah. So that's I think the only way you could have done that there. So just watch out for that. I know it sounds really subtle, doesn't it, and really pernickety, and in some ways it is. But just be careful where you put your whereases. Make sure they are actually, you know, linked points. I haven't written that as a key point to write down, but please do. And then just make sure you are, I guess, that you're drawing attention to your inference, although this is really concise and subtle, so I don't want to stop you from doing that. It's just the fact that it not writing about the home and caring Starmer just doesn't quite all fit together fluently. All right. Sorry, I feel like I've rushed that. Oh, that's okay. Please pause so you can jot that down. Right, in this one, text 2 focuses a lot on Starmer's mother and how Starmer made it possible to still see them under her bedroom. See them from under. What? Oh, from the window. Sorry. While text 1 mainly focuses on the money, quotation, worth a lot of money. So, my key thing that I want you to learn from this one is not to use the phrase focuses on. So can you, in your overview, it's fine because in an overview you're sort of summarising the angle that each writer's taken or what they've chosen to prioritise, and that's brilliant. But if you use it within the body of your answer, you're just going to have unfocused points. So yes, text 2 does focus more on Starmer's mother, but it's not a lot in terms of the text is still about Starmer and the question is about Starmer. So you're a little bit unfocused there on the fact that the question is about Starmer. So always lead with the thing that the question is about. And I just feel like there's no particular inference pinned down there that, you know, really what we're saying here is that Starmer is a good son, and you know, you absolutely know that. I can tell by the way you've written this, but it's just not pinned down. You just need to say it explicitly, and by using focuses on or focuses a lot on it kind of it just lends you to being kind of a bit vague. And yes, text 1 also mainly does focus mainly on the money. You're absolutely right, but text 2 does focus a lot on money as well. So just be careful that what you're saying is kind of really precise, and just please, the key takeaway is don't use that phrase focuses on. I think that's just led you down a little bit of a bad path. I don't know, a little weedy path. Doesn't have to be a terrible path, just, you know, an ideal path. However, excellent use of the connected whereas. I really like that. I think it's a really fluent connective in the middle of two contrasting points. So do try and use it. Also, it's fun to write because you feel like you're sneakily joining two words together. So I've always writing whereas, because that's the kind of thing I enjoy doing. Okay, this one's tricky to read, but I just wanted, I could read it, so I'm going to read it again because we can get something from it. It's just a poor picture quality. Starmer could have sold the house, but oh no. Okay, but instead, I'm paraphrasing, but instead he has been using it to house donkeys. Okay, so this is the point about that it suggests that he will not sell his land for housing and therefore he cares the environment. Now, the reason that this one wouldn't get a tick is for two reasons. The first one is there's no inference, so it's a description of what Starmer has done, but it's not telling me how Starmer is presented, what it suggests about Starmer. So always check, and you write this down, check that you have the word suggests or an equivalent word in your sentences to make sure that you've got an inference there. And also just say to yourself, have I got an inference there? But also the other issue with this sentence is that it's not linked to a specific text. You must start your sentence, or at least say somewhere in text 1 or text 2, because if you don't, you literally will not get a mark, even if it's a great sentence, even if it's great inference, and the quotation is clearly from text 1, the examiner will not give it you. You have to take responsibility for labelling your sentences and saying which text it comes from. It's part of the skill of comparison to say what you're referring to, which makes sense. Like, you know, all the way through your life, if you're comparing anything, you know, if you don't say who, imagine, you know, you've got two people you want to marry and you have to tell your parents which one it is and you just forget to actually say the name, they'll be all lost. I don't know why that's the first scenario I thought of, but there you go. So please make sure that you label which text your sentence is from. Okay, again, this one's quite difficult to read. Oh, it's even worse than it was when when I wrote it on the PowerPoint slide. But it's a really good one to learn from. So again, I'll do my best. So text 2 says he has been using it to rescue donkeys to emphasise that he uses his land responsibly. I'm paraphrasing. So yes. So the difference with the last one and this one is that this one has an inference. It suggests that he is using his land responsibly. Yes, he is, because he's rescuing donkeys, and that's amazing. And also, you know, it's still greenbelt land. He's not building on it. So that's the point for number 4. It's that he will not sell the land for houses. Now, I know he's not, is the person has not said that specifically, but they have, you know, that it's the same point there as caring for the environment. He's using the land responsibly. And the next sentence, in text 1, the use the green belt creates the impression that he doesn't care about wildlife. Now, I can't read the quotation very clearly, but I'm giving the benefit of the doubt. Yes, he doesn't care about wildlife because it's suggesting that he doesn't care about the green belt. I could definitely make out the phrase green belt, the sacrifice green belt. Sacrifice is a great word. So this is the opposite point from the opposite text, from text 1, which said that he will possibly sell the land to developers, suggesting he doesn't care about the environment. So we've got both points there for 2 marks. Really good. You could, however, have actually put, ironically, or I've led you to say, the word however. So before it, where it says in text 1, the word however could have gone there, or even you could have made it into one sentence and written whereas, because these are contrasting points. You know, or you could have started with, whilst text 2 says he's been using land responsibly, rescue monkey donkeys, quotation, comma, text 2 suggests that he uses it irresponsibly, is willing to sacrifice greenbelt, and he doesn't care about the environment. Okay. So what I just wanted to highlight from this is try to draw together direct opposites like this, because it's really useful, and it just shows you've read the text really well, and you can see these sort of like, you can look at one thing and look at another thing and see that they're making a direct opposite point, which obviously is very useful in life. I don't know, when you try and decide who to vote for and important things like that. Okay, oh no, that's not the last one. Right, this last one, I just want you to write down as an example, not the whole thing, I'll just take you through it. So I'm going to start near the end of the first line. Text 2 uses anecdotes. Oh no, sorry, this is a different one. So sorry. Right, text 2 uses anecdotes of neighbours with worried to imply that this land is precious as the community, to the community. So Sir Keir Starmer is caring towards others in not selling it. Similarly, text 1 uses neighbours' anecdotes with fear to suggest he is an intimidating and untouchable man, as they can't ask him about the land. Okay, so we've got a really good secure 1.1 sentence here. We've got the quotation worried, and we've got therefore he's caring towards others in not selling it. And we've also got a lovely connective similarly, and we've got the quotation fear, and then we've got the other inference, the opposite inference, that he's an intimidating and untouchable man. Now, just to stress, the word similarly is to compare the methods that both neighbours use anecdotes, rather than the inferences, because obviously the inference there is an opposite point, isn't it? But they're comparing the methods, so that works absolutely fine. Now, however, I wanted to show you this one because the word anecdotes doesn't quite apply here. When you're analysing a non-fiction text, unless it is like a specific story, you know, with a beginning, middle and end, or, you know, I have one neighbour who this happened to, then you can say anecdote. But if it's someone just paraphrasing what someone has said, then you need to use the method indirect quote, which you can see on the mark scheme. So, for example, you know, somebody has gone to speak, assuming that they're not completely making it up, someone has gone to speak to a nearby neighbour, and that neighbour has said to the journalist, well, yeah, I'm really scared that this land's going to be sold. I really don't want it to be. It really frightens me. And the journalist has gone back and typed that up as an indirect quote and just said neighbours are filled with fear. So that's what we mean by an indirect quote. Paraphrasing, just writing in your own words what somebody else has said. And newspapers do it all the time, firstly to protect the sources, but also so they can kind of, sometimes people say quotes that are a bit lengthy or not very well expressed, so the journalist will think of a better way of expressing it. They're not allowed to make up what they said, but they can, you know, tweak it to make it slightly better. And also it means they can be selective and just include what matters to them and their story. So, you know, if you get a newspaper article, you are likely to see paraphrasing and indirect quotes. So look out for those as methods. I think I'm going to do a lesson on methods next week. No more than that, because it's not that important, but I will do. So, you know, all it would require saying is uses the indirect quote of a neighbour in the word worried. There's really a sense of synthesis, I think, in the first point. So if you have a look at the text of text 2, the neighbours being worried is in one paragraph, and then the next paragraph goes on to say, however, Sir Keir Starmer is not going to sell it. So what this person has done is combined those two paragraphs to create this point, and that will help to get into those elusive 9-10 marks. The other thing I think is slightly missed opportunity here is the tense. Now, you're absolutely right you'd get a method mark by saying indirect quote anyway, so that would be fine. But something else you could have spotted is that they use the past tense were worried, as if they're not worried anymore. And that does create a very different meaning than to say that they're currently having fear. So that's something that you could have picked up on. And every newspaper article, obviously, any verb is always, well, not every verb, sorry, getting into A-level language now, but many verbs will carry a tense and will tell you when that thing was happening. So make sure that you consider that, and actually if it's written in present tense, obviously there's this sense of immediacy and this sense that it's ongoing. If it's written in past tense, if you've got that ed ending or the irregular verb of the regular past tense verb, then you can think, right, this is done, this is past. Does that matter? Does that shape the meaning that's created by this text? Okay, so a lot to learn from that one, I thought, and some 9-10 elements, but then also just something important to learn about the methods there. Okay, this is the one that I would like you to write down. So I'm going to start with the word whilst. Whilst text one implies he is not sure if that's money longing, and avaricious. You remember avaricious from when we did Inspector Calls? By using a direct quote from the neighbour who said his asking price was excessive. So brilliant method there, direct quote. Text 2 suggests, I'm assuming because I can't see that bit, he is kindly and generous by allowing his neighbours to extend their gardens. Okay, so we've got avaricious is definitely a brilliant inference about the way the first text portrays Starmer, and then we've got generous as the contrasting point for the way text 2 presents him. So what I'd like you to do is write this down as an example of 2 marks in one sentence and bringing together 2 very obvious contrasting ideas. Okay, it's also got some fantastic vocabulary in it as well. Okay, that is it. Next week I am going to go through a walking talking mock with you, and I just feel like we need to spend a little bit more time practice these, and I feel like some of you could do with a little bit more guidance from me. So that's what we're going to do next week. Can you message me if there's anything still about the comparison question you're not sure of, or if there's any of your marks you're not sure whether to give them a tick or not, and I'm happy to help you out. Can you also bear in mind that I did try to prioritise people on this PowerPoint who I hadn't in the last one when we did the evaluation question, so please don't be offended or concerned if yours isn't on here. I just tried to kind of mix it up a bit in terms of who I picked. Again, if you want specific feedback, you just let me know. Okay, I hope this is clear, and I hope you have a good day and a good weekend when it comes. Bye.